my property. Got anything? Kid Warp, can you hear that? I'll just wait here. Back. I am showing. I'm showing audio coming up. OBS. Let me know if it is there. Okay, awesome. Kid Warp, slow. I appreciate you guys giving. God, I thought that it's really hard doing this as a one man because there's a lot of stuff that's just sometimes you just. I appreciate you guys watching my back for me. Are we so is the audio good though? Low? Is it too high? Because it's a brand new microphone. Just put it on last night. Let me know, and I will continue with. All right. Yeah, it's everything should be good because I had to change the profile. My OB was there. All right, now. Okay, it looks like we got that figured out. Thank you, my eternal thanks to Kid Warp and Slow for watching my back over the App stream. Otherwise, I would whole damn thing without any audio whatsoever. It's not that I mean, I don't have I do it because, but if you've noticed, I've changed microphone. Um, you guys, because you have been very good, bought me a Shure, Shure, much better microphone. Bought them in much rich, radio type stuff. So I put it on there, but forgot to change over a lot of. So much appreciated, Kid Warp. Thank you, NPub 50 OLX for 1,000 sat boost. Nice is have that. Okay, now that I've gotten my mind apparently back together here, let's do this one from Bitcoin Magazine. This is biggest pieces in President Biden has blocked Chinese-backed Bitcoin mining firm from owning land near a Wyoming nuclear missile base. Holy shit, Hodlebod with 10,000 sats, brother. Good to see you. Thank you. I hope things are doing very world. Brother, we got to go get a beer. All right, so the United States President Joe Biden has issued an order prohibiting the acquisition of certain real property by Mine One Cloud Computing Investment One. I think they say LLP, but it says Investment ILP. I don't know. I've never seen that. Citing national security. The order, based on findings outlined by the president, are critical assets. Francis Warren Air in Cheyenne, Wyoming. The president's order stems from evidence indicating that Mine One Partners Limited, British Islands owned by Chinese nationals and related entities, and to acquire real estate within 1 mile of Warren. This real estate, specifically described as Lot 1, Block 10, filing, and the nature of operation. One poses potential national security risks due to its close proximity to space. Played. Mine One acquired the real estate back in June of 2022 and subsequently developed it for specialized cryptocurrency operations, which raised concerns about surveillance and espionage facilitated by foreign source equipment. Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS, became involved after a public tip, which they then identified significant risks to national security associated. The President's order prohibits transaction outright, requiring Mine One and its affiliates to divest all legal and beneficial ownership of the real estate. 120. Additionally, Mine One must remove all equipment and improvements related to their operations on the property 90 days, subject to verification by CFIUS. Furthermore, Mine One and its affiliates are barred from any physical access to equipment or improvements until divestment and removal are completed to satisfaction. In any attempt to circumvent this order is strictly prohibited, with the Attorney General authorized to enforce compliance. In response to the order, Mine One and affiliates are required to cooperate fully with CFIUS, providing regular updates on compliance efforts, blah, 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 blah. So they kicked them out. Whole stack of Bitcoin miners, 1 mile of strategic nuclear, just got basically thrown out of the country. Now, so on its face, that actually, I don't really have a problem with it because of this. It's a nuclear facility. I don't want, they could be Germans for all I care. I don't want them hanging out within a mile of strategic. I don't know what they're, I don't know. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of the federal government, I totally understand this. I get it. Except that there's some language in the executive talks about potential for this equipment, surveillance, and some kind of espionage. The fact that that language is in the executive order and it specifically pertains to Bitcoin mining, it's possible that this is one of the ways they might use, quote unquote, crush Bitcoin, which is not going to happen. We saw what happened when China banned it. First of all, it didn't actually work all the way because there's still a lot of heavy ass China. And second of all, they just moved to a different country. You know, a lot of them came over to the United States. A lot of them went up into An's country, you know, north and west Chinese border, top northwest corner, that nation. They just crossed the border. I think it was Uzbekistan. I don't know. I don't know my European and Chinese geography there, but in either event, it could be, except for this. And they're saying that this because it was all made in China, because the ASIC, because the controller made in China, somehow or another, espionage. All right, so fine. Or most of the chips in ours. In what did I say? I put a note out on not front end registers at grocery stores, all Chinese made. The pump controllers, gasoline pipelines, natural gas pipelines, guess what? They're all Chinese made. All the chips for all controllers, for all that shit. The heaters on natural pipeline. Well, that not in the pipeline station. There's heaters and there's coolers. All of that shit is controlled by chip. Airplanes, cars, buses, trains. You'd have to shut it all down. You'd have to shut it all down. Every surveillance camera. Because they were made in China, I guarantee. Or at least the electronics were. Or do we know they didn't back it and are sending like a copy of the feed over it? Don't know. So I don't think this has as many teeth think it does. Because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Somebody just gets all uppity and, well, if you're going to do it for this, then you best do it for all of this shit. Then that could scare the living crap out of the United States population when it becomes evident just our electronic information actually been built by the Chinese. So I'm not worried about it. I honestly think it's me in this particular case. I'm okay with them telling them to skip and get away from strategic nuclear silo site. I don't have that much problem with it. All right. Huddlebod? Okay, yeah, it might be cutting off. Let me see here. I can get. What do I got on filter? Let me see if there's an. What I'm going to do, I think here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kill this filter. And that is probably going to introduce a lot of noise into the background until I get this shit fixed up, because there's just no way to really test this stuff until you have somebody on the other side, listening to it. So let me know if this fixes up the cutting out, but also in over there in Zap.stream, please let me know how much more the background noise has increased. I'd appreciate that, because I'm pretty sure that I just increased a whole shit ton of background noise. Okay, let's get back to it. Let's go down south to El Salvador, where they've mined 474 Bitcoin using geothermal volcanic energy. Prashant Jha, Cointelegraph, tells us more about this one. El Salvador has mined a total of 474 Bitcoin worth $29 million. $25 million for using volcanic geothermal energy since 2021. Damn, $29 million since 2021 is not bad, dude. Well, the Bitcoin was mined with power from the country's Tecapa volcano using 300 mining processors. The country has allocated 1.5 megawatts to cryptocurrency mining out of the 102 megawatts produced by the state-owned power plant, according to Reuters. In the face of increased scrutiny over BTC mining reliance and electricity and fossil fuels, El Salvador has emerged as a pioneer in renewable energy mining. In 2021, El Salvador made history by becoming the first country to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender alongside the United States dollar. And since then, the government has adopted several Bitcoin-focused policies, including establishing a geothermal plant to mine BTC. El Salvador now holds a total of 5,750 BTC, worth around $354 million. Since 2021, global organizations such as the World Bank and others have heavily criticized the Central American nation for adopting Bitcoin. Blah, blah, blah. And then they go on to a little bit more history. But this is the first solid numbers that I've heard of mining in El Salvador using geothermal energy, or quote unquote Bitcoin or volcano Bitcoin. All right. It seems to me that El Salvador is becoming more serious about being transparent when it comes to their Bitcoin, because it was just Monday that I told you about the website that they had set up that is basically it looks to me not a hack, but basing this entire website off of mempool.space and turning it into where it's just watching their one wallet. And now we can see exactly what they've got in there. We can see the 1 Bitcoin per day allocations. We see it all. And now we're finally starting to get numbers from their Bitcoin mining. So I am looking forward to the future where El Salvador becomes even more transparent. Okay. Speaking of El Salvador, we are still going to remain down south in El Salvador, because BTC Times' Dennis Satt has this one called El Salvador launches a Bitcoin-based capital raise for a new airport hotel. Oh, interesting. After a prolonged process, beginning with the approval of their digital securities laws, El Salvador is now launching a Bitcoin-funded capital raise. This initiative potentially sets the stage for the much-discussed Bitcoin bonds announced by President Bukele. The capital will fund the construction of the only resort hotel at the Monsignor Oscar Arnulfo Romero y Galdames International Airport in San Salvador. God, that is a hell of a name. Marking the country's first venture into liquid Bitcoin-based capital markets. The project, identified as the Hampton by Hilton, is targeting a funding goal of $6.25 million. The funds will be utilized to construct a 4,484 square meter facility over 5 stories tall, featuring 80 rooms, commercial spaces, a swimming pool, and other amenities. The hotel's location within the airport's premises positions it to be the sole provider of hotel services in this area. The project site, leased from SEPA, the Salvadoran agency responsible for transportation infrastructure. The investment opportunity begins at a minimum entry of $1,000 US, with a total of 6,250 tokens available, each offering a 10% annual yield paid semi-annually. Watch out for the yield stuff, guys. I like Bukele. I'm not sure about him, but every time I see yield, I definitely get the hackles, especially double-digit yields, always gets the hackles on the back of my neck to stand up. All right, well, I've seen too much. I'm jaded because of it. But for investments exceeding $10,000, the project will provide complimentary stays at the resort. Overseen by Invisions LaGuardia SA de CV and facilitated through Bitfinex Securities, the project is projected to create 1,000 jobs during its construction phase and an additional 5,000 jobs once it's operational. The construction of the facility has already started and is expected to be completed within the next 12 months. For further information, interested parties can access details through Bitfinex Securities. Oh, God. This capital raise exemplifies El Salvador's ongoing efforts to integrate Bitcoin into its economic development strategies. I got something to say about this Bitfinex Securities shit. Without getting too far into the weeds on some of the sausage that I saw being made with the whole Bitfinex Securities thing by a couple of other companies that I am aware of, that I will not name. This feels really greasy, sleazy, oily, and a little bit slimy. The Bitfinex Securities is part of Bitfinex, but it is a different arm than Bitfinex, the trading platform. All right, it's the same company. I get that, but it is a different arm. Every time I see the word Bitfinex Securities, the hackles go way up on the back of my neck. This whole thing kind of bugs me, right? This whole, hey, we're going to build a hotel at our international airport. You can buy in for as little as $1,000, and here's these tokens, which Bitfinex Securities has done for a couple of companies. I don't know, man. There's something about this that feels, I don't want to say that it feels wrong. It could be completely above board. I'm sure that hotel's going to be great. It's just the way this is working just makes me just be aware, guys. You might want to keep your eyes on this kind of thing, because a slippery slope can happen with this entire thing going on in El Salvador. The wrong people get in, the wrong people get their clutches in, the wrong people sink and then bury to the bone very long fangs into El Salvador, and you've got yourself a problem. And then, if it is a problem, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and Peter Schiff will all stand together in a great big party and go, see, I told you. I told you. We tried to warn you. I don't want that shit happening. I don't know, man. Definitely going to have to watch and see this Hampton by Hilton hotel over there at the San Salvador airport. Now, back up into the United States, way, way up into cheese country, we've got Wisconsin becoming the first United States state to buy Bitcoin. And this is out of gizmodo.com. It is written by Matt Novak. Wisconsin has officially become the very first state in the United States to buy Bitcoin, according to a new filing with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. And while $98 million isn't considered a lot of money for a state pension fund, it's still a notable move given how notoriously volatile cryptocurrency investing can be. The SEC filing, available online, was first reported by CoinDesk, which notes the state of Wisconsin Investment Board bought 94,562 shares of BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust, worth about $98 million, and $63 million worth of Grayscale spot Bitcoin ETF. I don't know. See, it says that they put in 98 million total. I don't know. There's something wrong about these numbers. Gizmodo, I think, has got this wrong. I think it's a total of 98 million plus 63 million and not a total of 98 million, but somebody else check my math on that. Bitcoin ETFs were only approved this past January. Yes, we're aware. Quote, normally you don't get these big fish institutions in the 13 Fs for a year or so when the ETF gains more liquidity. But as we've seen, these are no ordinary launches, Eric Balchunas, an ETF analyst at Bloomberg, said. Good sign, expect more, as institutions tend to move in herds. End quote. The most famous large institutional investment in Bitcoin started in El Salvador when they did all of their Bitcoin law stuff. We're not going to worry about that. The thing is that we have a state pension fund. Now, it's not, this is the thing about it for any of you listening in other countries. There is pension funds that are private, and like, some like businesses will, buy those pension funds for their, as a package deal for their employees, and the employees put in their money into the pension fund as part of their draw from their daily check. But that's on a company by company basis, depending on where the company is and where they're headquartered, and blah, blah, blah. This isn't a company. This is the state pension fund. So this is owned by the state government, not a private institution. It's different. Why? Because it's the police, all of them in Wisconsin. It is the fire department, all of them in Wisconsin. It's all of the EMTs that are state funded, not the private guys, but like the guys at the ambulance. When you get your ass in a sling, you need some help, the ambulance comes. Yeah, a lot of that shit state funded. Teachers, all of your teachers, all of them in public school, that's they're going to have exposure to Bitcoin ETFs. All of these people, right? The state guard of Wisconsin. They're essentially state employees. All of the state military, right? All government employees of the state of Wisconsin. If you're working at the Capitol building as a receptionist, you now have exposure to Bitcoin ETFs because your pension fund if you're a state employee, your pension fund is determined by the state. If you're a state employee, that's your package. In Texas, I could have gone to a different one, but that's not true in every state. And I'm not sure about what's going on in Wisconsin, but for the great guts and feathers, even in Texas, most people were using, if you were a state employee, most people were just opting into the state pension fund. And I'm sure the exact same thing is happening here in the state of Wisconsin. So, out of all 50 states, it was the cheeseheads who figured it out first. I feel that this is not fair. I feel that Texas should have been at least on the docket to be the first to have, figured this shit out. But no. Up in the Great White North, in the frozen tundra land of the Green Bay Packers, it's the cheeseheads of freaking Wisconsin that are actually front running all the rest of the 49 states in the United States. And I feel cheated. Let's see if the numbers do me any better. Goddamn cheeseheads, man. Yeah, Kid Warp was just reading your note over here on Zapstream. I turned off a noise gate because the noise gate was set for a completely different kind of microphone, and I totally missed it. And that noise gate is in OBS. It's part of, like, you select your mic, and then you put on a couple of filters. I could put on an EQ. I could put on a couple of other things. But the one thing that I put on was a noise gate to make sure that I didn't capture a whole bunch of noise. Speaking of, is anybody hearing a bunch of background noise? If so, let me know how bad it is or if you hear anything at all, because honestly, I don't like using noise gates because they cause that choppy shit, but sometimes it's necessary. Let's move on, shall we? CNBC, futures and commodities. Oil is actually up today. After scaring the living piss out of Exxon and Chevron and all the rest of the oil companies out there with early morning moves to the downside, we're actually up a half a point on West Texas Intermediate, back up to $78.37. Brent North Sea is up a quarter of a point to 82.62. Natural gas is up almost 3 points to $2.41 a thousand, and gasoline is up just over 1% to $2.48 a gallon. All of your shiny metal rocks are having a good day. Can you imagine why? The CPI numbers came in this morning, and they were a little soft. It looked like inflation is getting a little bit better. So now everybody is thinking that means that Jerome Powell is going to cut rates. Spoiler, he's not going to cut rates. It's just not going to happen. But as far as shiny metal rocks are concerned, everything's golden because gold is up 1 1/3 points. Silver is up 3 1/3 points. Platinum is up 2.5. Copper is up 0.85%. Palladium is up just over 3. Ag, the futures are mixed, and I got chocolate making the biggest gain today, almost 7 points to the upside. Biggest loser is sugar, 1.27% to the downside. Live cattle up a third, lean hogs unchanged. Feeder cattle up 0.14%. All right, Clark Moody's dashboard. I got $64,950 as a price of Bitcoin. That is a $1.28 trillion market cap. You may purchase 27.4 ounces of shiny metal rocks with your one Bitcoin, of which there are 19,698,496.12 of. And fees per block have dropped again. 0.16 BTC taken in fees on a per block basis. So good, thank God. Speaking of blocks, what are the blocks doing? Let's see how many there are. 222 blocks are carrying 169,000 transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 15 Satoshis per VByte. Low is 13 Satoshis. No priority is 12, and anything under 5 is being kicked out of mempools around the world. We have a 573.2 exahash per second flash on hash rate as per mempool.space. Now on to episode 896 of Bitcoin and Roaring Kitty Meows. Nat Gas Immersion threw me 19,550 sats and just says thank you. No, thank you. Orange Mart boosted 5,000 sats and says sending sats save 10% off at Blockstream with code OrangeMart. Got himself a little advertisement in there. Reverend Hoddle with 2121 says boosting to help others find the signal. Appreciated. Axelrod boosted 1,000 Satoshi, says solid show. Interested in your thoughts on the Japanese issue. I don't understand how the United States Fed interest rates are putting the squeeze on them. Do you think Satoshi's name is a reference to Japan being the highest debt to GNP ratio? Let me just kind of say what I think is going on here. Japan is the largest holder as of right now of United States debt in the form of treasury bonds. Those treasury bonds have a face value. You buy the face value of a treasury bond is $100, and there is a coupon attached to that. It is a interest rate. So for that $100 on that one bond, you get X amount on interest, on percentage, on an annual percentage rate. When you sell it, if you've made interest on it, you get a little bit more than the face value. If interest rates go up on those bonds, the face value gets pushed down. So when you spend $100 on it, and then all of a sudden Jerome Powell does shit, and all of a sudden you get a 7% interest rate, and you bought it at 3% interest rate, you end up with a much less face value. If you are holding a shit ton of bonds that you bought a couple of years ago, your interest rates skyrocketed and your face value fell. And if you're using that to secure your bank is now technically insolvent, depending on how much of a loss on the face value of the bonds you're holding. So you might be inclined to sell those bonds. That could cause problems for the United States. The United States doesn't want Japan to sell bonds. The Chinese have already been divesting themselves of American bonds for a long, long time. It's kind of embarrassing, but there we are. So now we've got Japan. They're the largest holder. If they start selling, we could have a cascade failure, and we don't want that. So Jerome Powell, through the Treasury Department and all his little minions, and maybe the Secretary of State at the State Department of the United States, basically call Japan and say, we're going to give you money. We're going to start up the printers, but we're not going to give it to the American people. No, we're going to give you straight up United States dollars, and you're going to give us yen. Please, for the love of God, do not sell your treasury bonds, because that's going to cause real problems. They can print all the money they want, and it doesn't cause problems. It causes problems. It just doesn't cause problems immediately. A massive sale of United States Treasury bonds by Japan hitting the news wires is going to cause problems, structural problems, and they're going to be fucking immediate. And you don't want that. That's what's going on with Japan. So they're basically bribing Japan to not sell the bonds by printing money into existence and leveraging our children's future, because they just don't give a shit. All right. So Vake with 1,000 says three flames. 821 from Bitcoin Boaz says hashtag all sats matter at allsatsmatter.com. God's death with 537. Thank you, sir. No, thank you. User 507-408-94-500 sat says, I'm a bee first. Watch for me. Changing the world from inside the belly of the beast. Good luck. Wartime 333 says cheers. Pies with 100 says thank you, sir. No, thank you. And Stacy with 100 says another great show with more value than I have sats in this wallet. Thank you, sir. No, thank you, Stacy. And if you want the show to continue to be on the air, then boost, donate, do all the things. Stream me Satoshis. Use a Podcasting 2.0 enabled podcasting app. If you're using a legacy app, you're not having any fun. You're just listening to people. You can't really interact with them. Well, if you want to interact with me, throw me some Satoshis. Hell, I'll put you on the air. That's the weather report. Hold on, guys. I got to look for something. Be right there with you guys. Hold on one second. I got to make sure that something isn't messed up. Although it shouldn't be, but you never know. Hazard 149, thank you for the 149 Satoshis. Big fan of your work, dude. Seriously, big fan of your work. All right, here we go. Part 2 of the news you can use. Bitcoin Magazine. Developing financial privacy tools was today criminalized by the Dutch court. Yeah, here we're going to do it. Aaron van Weerdum writing this one. In the Netherlands, open source developers are now liable for their software that is used. Alex Pertsev, a 31-year-old Russian national living in the Netherlands and one of the developers of the Ethereum-based privacy tool Tornado Cash, was today found guilty of money laundering by the Dutch court. He's been sentenced to 64 months in prison. The fact that Pertsev never held custody of any cryptocurrency flowing through Tornado Cash or could even control how the smart contract operated was deemed irrelevant by the panel of judges, as he did contribute to the development of the software. In line with Dutch public prosecutor Martijn Borrelage, the court ruled that Tornado Cash was essentially ran like a business operated by PepperSec, the company founded and operated by Pertsev and his two co-founders, Roman Storm and Roman Semenov. But rather than just publishing code, the judges said that the trio benefited financially from the obfuscation of illicit funds through the tools that they built. Specifically, the judges ruled that Pertsev was personally responsible for the laundering of well over $1 billion US worth of stolen Ethereum, or ETH, whatever you want to call it, including by North Korean hackers known as the Lazarus Group. Even though Pertsev could not stop this from happening after their software was released, the fact that he helped release software that enabled this in the first place, without including measures to prevent it, was deemed reason enough to consider him guilty. Quote, Tornado Cash functions in the way the defendant and its co-founders developed Tornado Cash, wrote the judges, so the operation is completely their responsibility. Man, the judgment could have far-reaching consequences for open source software development in general, including Bitcoin software development, at least in the Netherlands. I'm actually going to add Nostr to that list. Y'all be careful out there. Please be careful out there, because God only knows what can drift through Nostr, considering that we can do Lightning payments. And somebody might say, well, the Lightning payment didn't go through Nostr. Technically, it doesn't do that. Yeah, I don't think these people care about technicalities. Technically, this guy had nothing to do with his shit except to write code. If your code can be something done that you had no idea, like runes and ordinals and inscriptions, when Taproot was put in and a couple of other things were put in, even though it sort of enabled that behavior, but we didn't know it was going to. We just weren't looking at that. And yet here we are with inscriptions and ordinals. Now magnify that into other shit like human trafficking and drug trafficking and all the stuff that everybody is all up in arms about. And if they can figure out a way to use your software to do something like that, and they do, then somehow or another, according to this Dutch court, you're liable, even though you had no intention of this thing being used the way it was being used. That's some scary shit, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let that be you, please. And this is the hard one. And I've talked about it, is this issue of don't use your name. Don't start your company. Don't have a company name. Don't use an LLC structure. Don't open a checking account for it or get a phone for it or an email for it. I don't think we live in that time right now. I think we're kind of in what I would call a mini dark ages, where none of the people that are building the things that all these people know need to be built. I don't think we're at a time where we can know their names. We shouldn't know there shouldn't be companies associated with them. If there are, we should not know that they're associated with the companies, and somehow or another the companies need to be completely offshore, but that's not going to matter. All of the development probably just needs to be done in the blind. And I have no idea what the hell this means for something like OpenSats. We have found this person guilty because their code, which was clearly funded by OpenSats, which means you're now liable. Really? Are they going to take all the guys at OpenSats to jail too? Does that mean that Jack Dorsey goes to jail? Because he funded OpenSats, which then funded a developer, which then built a protocol, which was able to, set up a date with a child trafficker. I don't know how. What's the chain of custody? There's a whole line of legal theory in the United States about chain of custody and chains of liability. And honestly, they're pretty short. But I don't know if we're going to change that too. The Dutch certainly did, but let's try to just keep calm. Because they sentenced this dude to 64 months. That's a long time. Now, thank God it's not life without possibility of parole or 2 life sentences plus 40. But let's be real. They're basically absconding with a good chunk of his time here on this planet without anybody's permission but their own. The shit needs to stop. But before it stops, everybody's got to go dark, I guess. That was a note that I put out yesterday, is like as if a billion people's identities suddenly went dark. Now, what happens if a billion people's identities are just basically left to collect dust? We just use different identities. I think we live in a world now where the whole reason we have names and last names and Christian names and middle names was simply a way to be able to propagate property legally from one entity to another entity, and we used names to do it. And maybe that's why we're so fascinated with identity and names, is because it's a fundamental part of transferring property from one hairy or hairless ape to another hairless ape. What happens if you got a billion people that figure out a different way to legally transfer property without those names? With a different, I don't know. It's because it's like I'm talking about a legal structure, and that the legal structure is not going to allow that shit. And even if they did, we're still working on, we haven't changed our boats. We haven't gotten off the sinking ship because this ship is sinking. We're still on the same ship. We're just calling it a different name, and that's not going to work. That's not going to work. It's going to have to be a billion people basically just going dark with their identities, choosing an M, and that's just the way they operate from now on until these silly sons of bitches either get strung up on a gallows or they just end up dying of old age. I don't know how this works. But one of the people that I worry about is Callie. He's one of the heaviest developers of eCash, which is, I guarantee you, is not making the United States government or any government around the world happy at all. They cannot keep up with these people. But Callie put out this note on Nostr yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. He says 3 Cashew wallets with USD eCash support launched in 1 week. Okay. He says. That's what he says. What is that? Well, Bob has another note that he put up pretty much shortly after Callie put his up. And he says, introducing Boardwalk Cash, the first dollar-based Cashew wallet built on top of Bitcoin and connected to Nostr. You can go see it at boardwalkcash.com. That's boardwalkcash, all one word, .com. We now have stable cash on Bitcoin, completely interoperable with the Lightning Network. Share your Lightning address or invoices to receive dollars. Dollars. I'll say it again, dollars. Paste a Lightning address or invoice to send dollars. Boardwalk Cash connects to any Nostr client via NWC or Nostr Wallet Connect. Zap dollars on Nostr apps like Primal or on Discord with our Zap bot. And it's any Zapper like Coracle.social is going to be another client that you can probably use this with, because it's just basically using Nostr Wallet Connect. And if Hodlbot, if you're still out there, correct me if you're using something different than Nostr Wallet Connect. In either event, this is a very early stage product, and there are not many public mints. So use at your own risk. Yet we're excited to show some of what Cash and Nostr can offer for advancing Bitcoin payments. So again, if you want to go see it, go over to boardwalkcash.com. And what you'll find is that there's not, like he said, not a whole lot of USD eCash mints out there to actually connect with. Further, I'm not exactly sure how any of this works. And what I mean is the sending a zap, I kind of get that. But I'm just saying USD-based eCash, what is that? Do we really know what that means? The people talk about how Tether and the USD-based stable, Tether being a USD-based stable coin. But is it really a dollar? I mean, it's not printed by the United States Treasury or the Federal Reserve. It's not that I don't understand it. I get the most part of it, but there's that last mile. Is it really a dollar? I'm not a fan of the dollar. I think it's one of the, I don't think it's doing us any good. But that said, how is it that I can walk into a Wells Fargo and say, well, I'll just I want to deposit $100 USD. And they go, sure, how you want to do that? I pull out my phone and I say, I've got a Cashew US dollar-based eCash mint right here. I can do it right here. Let me just send it to my account. Let's say you could do that. Wells Fargo is going to look at you and say, that's not US dollars. So you see, we fall into these traps where we see it, we understand it, we know it in our gut about a certain thing being able to perform a certain function. But when we're staying in our bubble and we're not transporting ourselves to the other side of that boundary layer and seeing what it looks like from that side, I don't think we're doing ourselves a real service. So somebody please tell me how I'm going to actually give somebody an eCash USD and have them look at it as indistinguishable from the United States dollar. That's what I want. A normie being able to look at my USD in eCash and say, yes, I recognize that as a dollar. Tell me socially how that works, because money is a very social critter. How am I going to convince a maid to take payment in USD? We're thinking, oh, it's US dollars. Is it? Is it really? Are we sure that social definition is going to be fucking painfully clear to any idiot that you show this to, because if it is not, then we've got a problem. That's what I'm saying. This is a social mechanism as well as a legal instrument. And in many cases, it's the social mechanism part that trumps the legal mechanism as far as recognition of that thing as a dollar. And yes, I will take that for my goods and services. So I'm just saying, it's not that I'm trying to shit on it. I'm just trying to bring up facts. And the fact is, I don't think a normie is going to recognize an eCash USD as US dollars. Not right now. I think we should just keep that in mind. Okay. Will Ethereum be declared a security? God, I hope so. And talk about lost opportunity cost since 2021. Do I even still have it up here? Hold on. No, I don't want you. Let me see if I can pull this thing up. Yep, here we go. Check this shit out. I mean, honestly, do you want to see that? This is a chart I just put up for the guys that in the Zap.stream. I put up a chart of Ethereum versus BTC and Ethereum's value in BTC terms since what? I'm going to put it back over here, and I'm going to say since May of 2021. Since May of 2021, Ethereum has done nothing but consistently lose value all the way to today. And I've got a couple of marks. I've got an upper line, which is an upper boundary, which was the upward resistance. And then I've got a floor line underneath a whole bunch of these candles, red and green, as they just kind of drift downwards. So the both lines are going left to right, but going down into downward direction. And Ethereum, as of this morning, just punched through the bottom resistance in a way that nobody, if you're holding Ethereum, nobody wants to see this shit. I mean, it broke through that resistance floor like nobody's business, and it's kind of embarrassing. If you went all in Ethereum and just been holding it since 2021 or before, dude, I feel for you, brother. Just buy Bitcoin, hold the Bitcoin. Anyway, Decrypt, Andre Bagansky has this one. The Securities and Exchange Commission may soon assert that indeed Ethereum is a security in its expected rejections of several spot Ethereum ETF applications. A lawyer who specializes in digital assets warned on Tuesday. The regulator is due to decide on VanEck applications for such a product on May the 23rd, followed by a final decision deadline for ARK Invest and 21 Shares applications the very next day. BlackRock, Fidelity, and Grayscale also have applications on the SEC's desk. In March, the SEC put forth potential grounds for the disapproval of BlackRock's application and Nasdaq's proposal to list BlackRock's product. One question the SEC posed in its notice is whether Nasdaq properly filed its proposal under the exchange's rules for so-called commodity-based trust shares, requiring that trusts hold a specified commodity. Scott Johnson, a general partner at Van Buren Capital, described the question's inclusion as telling. Quote, "The obvious purpose is to potentially deny on the basis that these spot filings are improperly filed as commodity-based trust shares and therefore do not qualify if they are holding a security," he wrote on Twitter. Rather than indirectly excluding the digital asset as a commodity, the SEC could explicitly assert that Ethereum is a regulated security in its expected ETF denials. But that's highly unlikely, Terrence Yang, a managing director at Swan Bitcoin, told Decrypt. Quote, "Gensler and his team, they're political animals," he said, arguing that the political backdrop surrounding crypto has grown too tense for a move that would likely spark backlash from crypto-friendly politicians, including former President Donald Trump. Following the SEC's approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs in January, hopes that spot Ethereum ETFs will get the same treatment have plummeted. On the blockchain-based prediction platform Polymarket, traders penciled in a pessimistic 16% chance that ETFs are approved this month, as of this writing anyway. even though SEC Chair Gary Gensler has publicly affirmed that Bitcoin is a commodity. The Wall Street cop has been light-lipped or tight-lipped when it comes to Ethereum refusing to answer questions about the cryptocurrency's regulatory status as recently as March. Last month, a lawsuit filed by the Ethereum software company ConsenSys alleged that the SEC had internally viewed Ethereum as a security for over a year. Among other requests, the firm asked a federal judge in Texas to declare Ethereum as a commodity. Prior to its approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs in January, the SEC denied similar applications for a decade, citing concerns of fraud and market manipulation in Bitcoin spot markets. So-called surveillance agreements monitoring the Bitcoin futures market for ETFs that were already approved would not be sufficient, the SEC said. Eventually, the federal appellate court found that logic faulty, ordering the SEC to vacate its previous rejection of Grayscale's application to convert its flagship trust into an ETF, given the SEC approved Ethereum futures ETFs last October. Yang said a similar headache for the regulator could follow if it points to bear market manipulation again, or just general market manipulation. I don't know why I said bear, whatever. Quote, they can do it, but they should expect to get sued. And I think they'll get attacked politically through the heavy lobbying that the well-funded crypto industry has. Yeah, ConsenSys is got a large pocketbook, and they will figure out a way to screw up what really needs to happen. Because what really needs to happen is that in this particular case, and I know I got Bitcoin bags. I have not liked Ethereum since I got rid of mine. And the reason I got rid of it is that I figured it out. It's a scam. It was a guy that got pissed off that his ideas weren't being included or taken seriously in Bitcoin development when he was working on Color Coins. That was a long time ago. Yes, he was working in Ethereum. He is the guy that started Bitcoin Magazine. Blah, 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 blah. You know who else was working on Color Coins? Jimmy Song. Jimmy Song was kind of working in a way with Vitalik Buterin on Color Coins way back in the day. We're talking 2013, 2014. Nobody was really, really taking Vitalik Buterin, his ideas very seriously. And he got mad. And that's how you got Ethereum, is you got a pissed off child who knows just enough code to be able to be dangerous, and you get an unregistered security. And the reason it's unregistered is because of the pre-line and because of ConsenSys and because of Joe Lubin as a partner in this entire thing. There's like three partners. There's like Joe Lubin, Vitalik Buterin, and one other guy, and I can't remember his name, and I don't give a shit. This thing is a security. It breeds other securities, which is a first of its kind in the United States, or actually in world markets. When it comes to securities, I don't know of any security that has bred other securities. It's like it has babies. All the shit coins that come out, they're all coming out of the mother asshole that is Ethereum. This thing is a security. And if you're holding a bag of it, I'd get rid of it as fast as humanly possible. I don't think this shit's going to work the way they think it's going to work. Anyway, that's going to do it for the morning roundup. Excuse me, guys. Just looking for something here. And for any of you that are new to the live stream, I'm recording the actual podcast as we speak. And the way that I've learned how to do this, for the way that the show works, is that I I do these pauses to go look for the stuff that I need, and then I do editing on the back end. What if you listen to the same show on the actual podcast, like you download it from Fountain app, everything that I'm saying right now is not going to be in there because I've paused, right? Because I'm looking for something. So that's an edited version. You guys are basically getting everything raw and unfiltered. Okay, let's see here. Nobody gets this joke. I'm looking for a good dad joke, and I found it. Dad says jokes. What do you call a Frenchman who's been attacked by a cat? Claude. Get it? Ha! Okay. So happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope everybody is doing very good today. We've got some good green candles on the hourlies going up. Feels better than the last couple of days. Wisconsin's buying in. We got Wells Fargo buying in, although paltry, and then JP Morgan buying in a little bit more. I don't know. I hate saying it all the time, but we're going to have to actually see how this rolls out. But of all those news of people, like all of a sudden, all these 13, what happened is a bunch of filings to the SEC were due this week and like late last week. And that's where we got the news. These filings are called 13Fs. That's like your 1040 EZ or 1040 form, form 86 or whatever. It's a form. It's a 13F. And as people start reading them and they start realizing, holy shit, the state of Wisconsin is holding Bitcoin, and here's the way that they're holding it, because it's all lined out in those 13F filings, and more are due. And it'll take time to figure out who's in and who's out, but there's going to be more 13Fs on the horizon. Not just in this tranche, but I get the feeling that they're quarterly, but they may be annually. I'm not exactly sure on the 13F. But if we're done with this year and they're annual, next year there's going to be another round. I think there will be at least one more United States state that gets in on their pension this year. Their retirement fund, their pension fund. That's at least one more state, and God, I hope it's Texas. Let's cross our fingers, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, there you go. Who's with me? Who's still with me in the live chat? Okay, I got a couple of people in the live chat. Let's see if we can get y'all. No, stream shouldn't have died. It shouldn't have died. Kid Warp, can you hear me? Okay. Let me see if I can't get y'all over to raid. Let's see. Who's raiding? There's not a whole lot of people. There's not a whole. Oh wait. Oh. I'll take you over. I'm gonna send y'all over to send you over to Odell, and what I gather is Citadel Dispatch. So let's cruise over there.